series I have going, actually, is mail armor. Now, this channel is going to be talking about arms and armor mostly, the history of warfare, and something, go a little bit into these tactics and things like that. Basically, my little take on them from what I understand, as well as looking into the original sources and talking about them, and to better understand these things. The reason I find it kind of a big deal, because arms and armor, and as well as architecture, are a good measurement, in my opinion, a good measurement in how advanced a society was, or civilization. These great big buildings they left behind, these armor, these weapons and stuff they made, shows the skill and the infrastructure they had to make such things. They had the knowledge, the infrastructure, the technology to do these things. And that's why I'm talking about this kind of subject. And I like to tie those things together a little bit, if I could, a lot, to what I know, and how it just overlaps each other. And I think that's something that's pretty important to understand. But anyways, I hope you enjoy these videos in the series about Chainmail and all the other ones I'll about to be making, and all the knowledge that you'll hopefully gather from them. So, what is Chainmail exactly? Well, as you can see here, these are small links. These, I think, some other videos I made, I said these are 6mm links, but I'm not sure. They look more like 8, to be honest. These could be 8mm. I don't think these are 6mm. I think these are 8mm links, and they're flattened and they're riveted. Now, I'll get to that later. So, basically, chainmail doesn't have to be flattened or riveted, but what they are is they're small links that are connected to each other. You have a solid ring and another ring that's connected to that solid ring, and there's different. You can make different patterns of them. Now, the effectiveness of the patterns, I'm not quite sure, but I do know the most popular one, at least in Europe, were the 1 in 4 pattern. So you got one solid link, you have 4 of them connected to that, and then you do the same thing over and over again, and you basically get this. Now you can make different shapes. You can make a shirt of mail, long sleeve, short sleeve, or whatever. A hoodie, which is a coif. This is, by the way, a proper way of a coif in this picture. This is how it really looks like. As you can see, that is a proper coif, not this. Their manufacturing was probably a little different. I'll get to that right away, very soon. But yeah, that's what mail is. It's links, and you form different shapes. You have legs, mittens, and things like that. So that's that's how you create this kind of protection. That's how it's designed. You can design it in different ways. And that's the beauty about chainmail. Now, the material from that armor is iron and steel. I did read somewhere that there was spring steel that was mail. I don't know how effective that would make it more, or I would think it would make it more effective, but I'm not quite sure. The Romans did love to case harden their armor a lot. It was almost a standard thing. So most overwhelming of their armor has been case hardened, I believe. So it's possible that Roman mail might have been case hardened. I'm not quite sure. I do know they're made out of iron and steel. They probably had some bronze mail as well. That I'm not 100% sure either. But I do know there's iron and steel. That was used. Iron and steel, for sure. Now, who used it? Well, first, who invented it? Nobody really knows who invented this armor. We all know it's from Northern Europe. It came from the BC era, ancient era. We don't know the exact day. We don't know the exact person who invented it, obviously. We don't know the exact group of people who invented it. We really don't. However, the Romans do credit the Celts, I believe, or could have been the Gauls. The Celts or the Gauls for inventing this form of armor. At least maybe that's who they ran into first, with this armor when they first fought their adventures all the way up north, or if they came down to invade. So they encountered this form of armor, and they give the credit to the Celts and the Gauls. It could have been the Scandinavian tribes up there that invented it. It could have been, the Germans that could have invented it. We don't know. So it's possible the Germans could have invented this armor. Ever since from its invention, it spread like wildfire. The Romans adopted it hardcore. The Persians had it. The Ethiopians had it. It was used in Europe all over for a very long time. So a lot of people used it. The manufacturing, and as for manufacturing, from what I understand, the Romans did have a very big wire industry, and this was passed down to later the Europeans throughout Europe, especially during the Romans when the empire collapsed, the Western Empire collapsed. They left their infrastructure, so this knowledge was passed down. And the way they've done it, both the Romans and the medieval Europeans, is they somehow managed to get metal, particularly iron and steel, and I guess they kind of like compressed it into bigger holes, and they gradually got smaller and smaller and smaller to these draw plates. So they had these draw plates, and they either hammered this stuff in there, compressing what seems to be, the description. It seems like they're compressing the metal somehow, forcing it through a hole, and then they force that other one to a smaller one, and a smaller one, and a smaller one, through these different sizes of draw plates, which is pretty similar how we do wire today. Without the electronics. Now, hammering it through is not a modern thing, but they probably also had forms of ways they've done it with machinery, they've probably done it mechanically, as you can see in the picture. So they probably done it mechanically, and you see these guys working on wires and stuff, and they had a huge wire industry because of it. This in turn denses the iron and steel, so it becomes stronger that way. It becomes, you basically kind of sort of, I guess you could say, compress the steel a little bit in the molecules, which makes it a tougher form of metal. And from what I understand, the flattened rings were a very popular style. So the Europeans take that wire, they make rings out of it. I'm not quite sure how they do the solid rings, but they have to do solid rings as well, and they flatten it, which even creates even more strength. And this is why I believe that with such manufacturing techniques, that European chainmail was perhaps the best in the world than any other chainmails produced. So European chainmail was quite a bit stronger than other chainmails in the world through this process. It's probably why they used this armor for so long, and why they preferred this armor than, let's say, Lamellar or Scale, which I will go into in a different video. Breaking news. So, I have discovered something fairly recently, about almost 2 weeks ago, to be honest, and I just wanted to make a video about it. So, I decided to do it in here as a breaking news. So,
what did I discover? Basically, it's another form of construction on mail. Alternative way to make chainmail. For whatever reason, maybe you just don't have wire. Okay, well, you have pieces of plate. And guess what? You can make chainmail out of it. Simple as that. You know, it's also a bit faster from what I understand. So it does skip some steps than messing with the wire. So it is a little bit more faster. It's a little more cost effective. I could imagine a poor knight or even a well-to-do peasant could probably afford that armor, and it would be a major upgrade than what he would have had instead of just padded armor. So you have that, that's a major upgrade. Now, what I did find out is the Romans did this quite a bit to recycle their armor. I'm sure the medieval Europeans did the same thing with their scale 9 of art. So, you know, they'll recycle that kind of armor because, you know, those kind of armors require pretty good maintenance. And instead of just throwing it away, they'll take the strips of, you know, the scales or whatever, and they'll just puncture rings out of that. So just puncture rings out of that, and you make a new form of armor, which is chainmail or mail, to be more, you know, correct, proper. So what they did is the Romans, from what I understand, is they took a piece of their segmentata armor that's fallen apart, and they started to just puncture rings, kind of like a hole puncher, I guess you could say on paper. Similar concept, I would imagine. So you take those rings and you obviously start messing with it, cutting it and all that, and rivet them together, solid ring, I'm sure, and snap it together, rivet, snap together, rivet, to make a form of armor, as this one right here. So I would assume it's the same thing. How good it was, I don't know. How compared to, let's say, how it compares to the chainmail that's made out of wire. All I know is the regular chainmail that's made out of wire, especially the flattened rings, seem to be superior. How much good, I don't know. I know that it's a better form of armor. It's a major improvement. And I guess it performed in a similar way as the better form of mail. How much similar? I don't know. It will stop cuts. It will stop the same stuff that the better chainmail. So it is metal armor. So it is an improvement. I believe the Europeans did make the best form of chainmail in the world, and the reason, regarding chainmail, of course, the reason I say this is they were able to create chainmail so woodenly just linked to each other, so tight to each other that you cannot put a pin needle through it. So that's their capability of making the armor. The super top quality chainmail was like that. You can't put a pin needle through it. It's just woven together in such a way, it's ridiculous. and it's still very flexible. It still flexes, so it's a beautiful form of armor. It's amazing. So I will discuss some of that later. Why, you know, I think Chainmail was a really good armor, better than what people think, actually, much better. And a lot of primary sources talk about this. So that's kind of for a different video for another time. But as for regarding to what chainmail is and how it's made and stuff like that and who used it, well, some peasants had mail armor. Soldiers had mail armor. Knights had mail armor. And officers, you know, we're talking about in the context of, you know, I'm mainly talking about, you know, the Roman Empire, the Western Roman Empire, and Roman Republic, up until, you know, the early Crusades, where mail armor was heavily used in Europe and other places too. The Persians had it. Now, how other cultures constructed it, been their main source of construction mail was through puncturing holes on strips of metal and things like that. And while in Europe, this form of construction is more an alternative form of construction. It wasn't the main form. It's a alternative. Like, you don't have wire? Well, I have this, and I could make mail out of this piece of metal, for example, and this card I get it. But, you know, they could just puncture it. Oh, I have this set of armor that's falling apart. Let me take this lemon lar. That's such a headache. Let me just start punching these little, you know, scales into mail. So all you need is metal. You don't have to worry about cords, leather, buttholes, and things like that. You just make a mail shirt to go over you. And that's the thing. And I think I do find that quite interesting. It is another form of construction that the Europeans did and the Romans did, as well as could have been the main construction in other places. So the quality of mail on that could vary also very highly. While I think the ones made out of wire is a little bit more, I wouldn't say uniform is the right word, just a little more consistent maybe, is a better word to put it. They're a little more consistent, and it is a superior form of mail making out of wire, because you're forging it, you're messing with it, you know, the more you forge metal, the harder it gets, and the stronger and more rigid it gets. Anyways, I guess I just did this little thing. Back to main program. So
the Chinese, from what I understand, I don't know if they actually produced mail, but they probably imported some, and they found it as an exotic form of armor. I think it's a manufacturing part of the infrastructure that the Europeans already had and they're familiar with, and it worked very well for them. I think that kind of answers a lot. I hope you learned something, or you enjoyed it at the least. You enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed making it. And the next topic will, you know, after this series, will be I'll move into plate armor. Thanks for watching, and hope you guys have a good day.